Thank you all for joining. This is our third and final session of the Koala Conservation Crew virtual educational series. So today we will be talking about the impact of brush fires. So here's kind of an objective and overview of what we will be talking about today. So all about the Australian brush fires. What were they? What caused them? What was the impact on wildlife? Why were they so bad? How are ecosystems effective? How has the world fought them, and who fought the fires? As well as we'll have a forest fire prevention presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to my two volunteers, Amy and Emily, who will be leading us in the first portion of our virtual series today.
What were the Australian brush fires? The Australian brush fires were extremely intense fires that spread uncontrollably since June of 2019. Firefighters and Australians have been fighting these fires constantly. A multiple-day downpour helped to put out many of the fires. So pictures show some of the locations.
So what caused the brush fires? So what do you guys think? You can unmute your mic and shout it out, or you can put it in the chat. It's up to you. What are some factors that you think impacted it?
Lightning strikes?
Okay, good guess. Any other ideas? We have a drought.
Possibly the climate.
Climate. All right, those are very good guesses. So the fires have been caused because of the record-breaking temperatures, extended drought, and the strong winds. The temperatures varied around 107 degrees Fahrenheit in December, which is summer in Australia. So the fires were so bad because of the droughts that happened this year, and a drought is a long period of time without rain, and that leads to a lot of water shortages. So the drought dried out all the plants in Australia, which caused them to burn faster, longer, and spread fire much more easily when the fires did start. So a firestorm also played big roles in spreading the fire. So what do you think a firestorm is? Any guesses on what a firestorm is? Uncontrollable fire, okay.
When the embers of a fire kind of rain down onto the forest.
Okay, yep, that's a good guess. Well, a firestorm starts when extreme fires cause lightning, tornadoes, and dangerous winds. And there were about 89 of these storms when the bushfires were happening. So in the bottom right, you can see the firestorm with the lightning. And in the left, you can sort of see the fire getting whipped around by the winds and tornadoes.
How ecosystems are impacted. So far, there are 143 million mammals, 2.46 billion reptiles, and 180 million birds, 51 million frogs known to be harmed or killed in the fires. Fires can kill mature trees, which serve as a food source and a habitat for many animals. The loss of these woodlands and grasslands have been devastating for the animals that need them as a place to find food and a place to live. So the pictures at the bottom show how some of the animals have been affected.
So how many koalas do you think died during the fires? What's the number that you think represents how many died? Any ideas?
Too many.
25,000.
Okay. Any other guesses? Okay. Well, as of June, it was between 5,000 and 10,000 koalas reported to be dead from the fires. But many more are dying because of unsustainable conditions because of the fires. And we also know that a lot of them are very hurt, and that can also lead to a lot of problems that could kill them as well. In the pictures, we can see their habitats have been completely destroyed, and they're sort of just trying to live off of what's left.
How the world is battling the fires. The Australian government gained help from its Navy, Army, and Air Force in an effort to put out the fires. As well, the US, Canada, and New Zealand sent equipment and resources to help the Australians with the fires. The Australian Red Cross has helped more than 18,600 people who have been affected by the fires and heat waves. So the bottom pictures show what the efforts are in order to put out the fires. Who fought the fires? Tens of thousands of firefighters, many of them were volunteers, put in at least 12 hours a day to help fight the fires. So the pictures below show the firefighters that were involved in helping fight the
Where are the fires now? Well, Australia just declared that New South Wales, which is an Australian state, is officially free from brush fires for the first time in over 240 days. So even though the recent downpour of rain just put out so many fires, there are still about 50 of them burning, just in 2 states alone. So we can see the firefighters are rejoicing about the rain, and we can see the rain putting out the fires. So do you think that the fires are coming back? What are your guesses? Yes or no? Maybe a reason why? Any ideas? Okay, we have a yes, there's a no, yes, yes. All right, well, the fires, there is a good chance that they will come back worse in the next bushfire season. Climate change is the main reason that the fires were so bad this year, and things may only get worse.
Thank you, Amy and Emily, for that presentation. Now we have a guest speaker, Matt Watson, who is the Forest Fire Control Technician, a part of the New Jersey Forest Fire Service, who has around 20 years of experience in dealing with forest fires. So I'm going to ask him some questions, like generally about forest fire prevention, about forest fires, about his job, etc. And then after that, we'll have a open forum where anyone can ask him questions if we didn't cover it. So I often see Smokey Bear. Can you explain who he is and what's his relevance to fire prevention?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Smokey Bear originally started from a little black bear that got burned, a black bear cub that got burned at a fire in New Mexico in 1944. And he was saved by, the the U.S. Forest Service. And he was nursed back to health and he became a national symbol. And in 1956, it was deemed by an act of Congress to start a fire prevention program using him as part of it. And he lived in the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. until he died. I don't remember the year, but he died of natural causes. And it just kind of exploded. And Smokey Bear is the longest running public service announcement in the history of the United States. And he just turned 75 last year in August 9th of 2019. He turned 75 years old. So that's how they kind of work it that way. And they push this a lot. We do a lot of programs, for children and adults alike. And we use Smokey Bear. And Smokey's got 5 rules of fire prevention. So I'll read them out real quick. Only you can prevent wildfires. Always be careful with fire. Number 3, never play with matches or lighters. And number 4, always watch your campfire. Don't ever leave it alone. And number 5, make sure your campfire is completely out before leaving. So those are 5 of Smokey's rules that he wants everybody to know.
Yeah, those are really important 5 rules that everyone should know. So I know that you are a part of the New Jersey Forest Fire Service. So what do you guys do to prevent wildfires from happening in New Jersey?
Like I said, we do a lot of programs. We do a lot of, young children programs. We do programs at county fairs. We do programs at community days, things like that. We have a Smokey Bear comes out and visits. He's a character that we kind of a mascot thing that we get on loan, and we're able to show him off. And he helps kids learn about fire safety. And we also do stuff called prescribed burning in New Jersey to help prevent wildfires. So we can talk about that later if you'd like.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you remember the last significant forest fire that happened in New Jersey? And then, like, what was like the cause of that fire?
Okay. My last significant fire in New Jersey was in a town of Ringwood, which is up in Passaic County, and it was 17 acres. And the cause of the fire was a bad insulator on a high tension power line. And that was because of old age on the insulator. It arced during the summer and created a wildfire.
Do you remember like how many acres or how much land was burned during that fire?
It was 17 acres. It was grass and forest, mostly grass. I think it was, I would say it was probably 12 acres of grass and 5 acres of forest.
What tactics did you kind of use to extinguish that fire?
Okay, our tactics that we use, we have specialized fire engines. They're usually about the size of a pickup truck, and they're 4-wheel drive. Oh, there they are. Very good. They're called Type 6 engines, and they carry about 300 gallons of water on them, and they're able to get places that the regular fire department from your municipality can't get to. So they're more agile in the woods, and they pump water and they can draft water out of a lake or stream. And we use helicopters, as you can see the pictures there, the helicopters that we have. They are military surplus helicopters. We get them from the government, and they're free from the U.S. government. They give them to us, and we have to maintain them, and they give us parts and resources to keep them going. And we hire usually ex-military pilots because they're used to those machines, that aircraft. So underneath the helicopter is a thing called a bucket. And the bucket holds about 325 gallons of water, and he can dip out of a lake or a stream or a pond, pick up that water, and then transport it over top of the fire and drop it on the fire to help us put it out.
How many people, like, when you're putting out a fire, like, depends on its size, like, I don't know, like, how many people, like, normally fight a fire at a time?
It all depends on the fire. There's some fires where I can do it myself. It's only a 1/4 acre or maybe even a 1/2 acre. But once it gets above a 1/2 acre, then I have to call in some reinforcements. And usually we use our, we have a part-time crew they're like volunteers. They get paid a little bit of money, but not a whole lot, that are trained just like I am, and they work on the fire with me. So it could be anywhere from 1 to a couple hundred, depending how large the fire is in New Jersey.
And then I know water is like something that's mainly used to put out a fire, but do you guys use any other chemicals other than water?
Yes, we do. We use a thing called Class A foam, and it's a concentrated foam mixture. And we usually dump a little cup of it into our tank, and it mixes with the water, and it makes the water a little more stickier. So it sticks to the vegetation that is burning or is going to be burning, and help slow it down and stop it.
Mm-hmm. And then recalling, because me and Mr. Watson had a conversation yesterday, you were talking about prescribed burning. So I was kind of interested in what that is. So maybe you can explain that to everyone.
Sure. We do a lot of prescribed burning in New Jersey. we use fire to fight fire. So when we do the prescribed burning, it's usually a piece of property that we want to reduce the hazards. Um, the hazards being buildup of dead vegetation on the forest floor or in a field, overgrown grass. And what we do is we study the area, we draw up a written fire plan or a prescribed burn plan, and then we burn it when the weather is conducive for burning, which is usually low humidity and sunlight for a couple of days, no rain for like 3 to 4 days, and it's dry and cured. Then we can burn it, but we do it slowly so that it eats up that fuel on the floor, the forest floor. And if there was a fire to happen in that area, it wouldn't have the fuel to support it, and it helps with the fires in the long run.
Okay, so that was actually my last question that I had. So if anyone has any questions now for Mr. Watson, you can unmute, you can write it in the chat. So does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you ever volunteered in any other state other than New Jersey to help fight a forest fire? I know in the news in the U.S., the West Coast obviously has fires that are still raging right now. Have you personally ever?
Yes.
Volunteered?
Every year we get detailed to go out west. We call it an out west trip or out of state fire assignment. And this year I did 4 trips. It was a busy year for us. I did 2 weeks in Wyoming and South Dakota, and then 2 weeks in California, then came home for 5 days and 2 more weeks in California. And then at this 2 weeks ago, I just went to Ohio for a 4 or 5 day fire assignment as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm reading the message here. No, I'm not a hotshot. I never applied for one. It's a federal job. I work for the state. As far as the movie goes, it's pretty accurate. I happen to know I met Eric Marsh's wife last year at a seminar, and she's like super awesome. Okay, so what is a hotshot? A hotshot is a highly trained hand crew, they call them hotshots, that can go and be self-sufficient for 21 days out in the middle of nowhere and fight fire and do their job. Do you prefer a Pulaski or a Mac? I don't know what a Mac is, but I usually use a Pulaski or a combi tool. It's my 2 favorite.
Anyone else have any other questions before we continue with? So I'm assuming that no one has any further questions. If you just suddenly do, then you could just unmute now. But here is a session recap. So what you guys learned today was all about the Australian brush fires. What were they? What caused them? What was the impact on wildlife? Why were they so bad? How are ecosystems affected? How is the world fighting them? And who fought the fires, as well as our presentation about forest fire prevention. So again, I kind of like to reiterate from last session, which was all about the importance of koala conservation. If you haven't already signed the Koala Protection Act, if you could do that. All the information is on my website. Basically, the Koala Protection Act is an act that will help protect koalas and their future. So if you could do that, that would be really great. And if if you do wind up sending the letter, please remember to fill out the register, as this helps measure my success rate. And if you want to support the Koala Conservation Crew, you can visit my website for more information. And as well, we have a GoFundMe link and merchandise. So the merchandise is on the screen. We have a reusable bag that can be really helpful, especially now because of New Jersey's kind of ban on plastics bags, as well as we have t-shirts, and the t-shirts come in unisex sizes all the way from extra small all the way up to 3X. And that's all I have today. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute right in the chat right now. Otherwise, you are free to go. And thank you for joining the last session. I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. And lastly, thank you to Mr. Watson, Amy, and Emily for this presentation today.